check that things are all working satisfactory. There we go. Excellent. A bit of feedback. There. Right, so where were we? Last time I was talking about Chosen. Yeah, so we're back to finish off this Slave to Darkness battletome review, as I was unfortunately called away during the last one. We don't have much left to go through, just some more of the War Scrolls. We were talking about Chosen. Not entirely happy with these. They're Chosen are supposed to be the elite warriors of the Chaos Army, and they do 1 damage with the Rend 1, and they get 1 more attack than a Chaos Warrior. You might as well just take Chaos Warriors. Yeah, there's a buff where other people get to reroll to wound, reroll to hit. If it kills something, it's like they were before. Reroll to wound for Slaves to Darkness units wholly within 12. It's just Chosen just aren't good enough for what they should be. They need to be damage 2 or rend 2 or D3 damage even, or something a bit more hitty than they are. Because yeah, that's my issue with Chosen. Spawn is still Spawn. Chariots are slightly better. They've effectively got the same charge mechanic as ogres. Roll a number of dice equal to the charge distance, and 5-ups are mortal wounds. This is very good. And the weapons are better. Well, especially the Chaos Greatblade is a lot better. Now it hits 2 attacks, hits on 3s, wounds on 3s, rend 1, damage 2. Now, this is something that confuses me because we'll see later on with the Chaos Warriors. But yeah, 3s with the Greatblade on the Chariot. Rend 1, damage 2. Very good. The Flail I'd still never use at D6 attacks. Anything that has a random number of attacks I rarely use unless it comes as part of a larger War Scroll like the Manticore. Trampling Hooves at 4s, as you'd expect. They're pretty basic, simple, easy to use. Not bad now with the chariots, with the charges. Gobi's chariots made themselves a lot better. Same weapon profiles as the Gobi's chariots. The whip, 2 attacks, 4s, 1 wound at 1 damage. Greatblade, 2 attacks, 3s, rend 1, 2 damage. And even if you want to take them in units of 1, then they become the Exalted Charioteer, and all the melee weapons, excluding the mounts, get an extra attack. So 3 attacks with the whip, 3 attacks with the Greatblade at damage 2. And with the Mark and Nagel hitting on 6s, make that damage 3. It's got the potential to be a lot better. And the Crushing Fists, if you charge more than 8 inches with the Crushing Fists, it used to double the amount of attacks. Now it's +1 to hit and to wound. So, I mean, that's not bad. And again, the same applies with the Mark and Nagel. Potential 3 damage. But yeah, 3 attacks. Charging more than 8 inches, 2s and 2s, 2 damage. That's pretty good. 150 points. I'd say they're kind of worth it now. I'll definitely be trying them out in a Ruinbringer battalion. Chaos Knights, they got an increase. They got one of the things that I thought they needed. So I'm kind of happy. The points went up slightly, but they're still worth taking. My only issue is with the Cursed Lance profile. So they're the same as they were before. Movement 10, 3 wounds, 4+ save. I still think the 4+ save should be a 3+ save, but you know, what are you going to do? Ensorcelled weapons, so the swords, 3 attacks, 3s as they should be, rend 1 as they should be, fine, damage 1, absolutely fine. The ensorcelled weapons are now an option, a good option to take for all around. I enjoyed the lances for the +1 damage on the charge. They used to be rend 1 on the charge. They used to be rend 1 damage 2. Now they are rend 2 damage 2. Again, if you go with the Marker Nurgle and you roll a 6 to hit, these lances become rend 2 damage 3. And if you're re-rolling to hit with the demonic power from the sorcerer, you're increasing the odds of rolling those 6s to get the damage 3 lances with rend 2 on the charge. They can potentially do a lot more damage than they could. Though I've been having a lot more success with them, running them in units of 5. I used to run one big unit of 10, but found that it got bogged down because even on the charge with the rend 1, couldn't do sufficient damage to do what I wanted it to do, to wipe a unit, and then it'd sit there fighting the same unit for the whole game, and that was 10 knights slowly dying. Now they can be a lot better. They still have the -1 bravery buff, which I seem to forget all the time. But yeah, knights are being improved slightly, but good enough to definitely make them worth taking. Onto the Chaos Warriors. This was, when I saw this War Scroll, I was very disappointed because I looked at the statistics, what their characteristics, and for the most part was fine. They got 1 increase in bravery, which is good. Move was 5, which is fine. Wound 2 wounds as normal, good. The save I was hoping was going to be 3. It's still at 4. Can deal with that because there's ways of re-rolling it, but considering how many, like they've got factions like the Bone Reapers now that can do a 3+ armor save with Petrifex Elite. You got Stormcast Eternals, which have characters with innate buffs. So got any unit wholly within 12, or any unit within 12 can have +1 to its armor save, and then you get innate abilities for their characters to go, oh, I'll give a unit a +1 to its armor save. So they can have 2+ armor saves, re-rolling ones. And people say I'm complaining when I ask for a 3+ armor save. And they go, you're crying. Well, considering what the other elite factions out there can do, 2+ saves, re-rolling ones, all I'm asking for is a 3+. And people say I'm complaining. I never understand that. Because I expect a little bit more to be in line with the other decent factions out there. Yeah, it confuses me. But 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, that is as they should be. The only other thing that I thought they could have done with was rend 1. And there's no other way to get another rend in the army. I was hoping that even if they didn't get a rend 1, there might be a spell in the spell lore that give you the opportunity to increase the rend with the unit. Cast a spell that increased that unit's rend by 1. That would have been fine. Have a big unit of 30 warriors, increase their rend. That would have been okay. But no, we're still sat there. Yeah, we're hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s. We're going to put out more wounds, but against people like the Petrifex Elite, which is sat there re-rolling armor saves on the 3+s. Got the Stormcast, the 2+s re-roll ones. You're tickling them. You've got your feathers out again. Oh, tickle you. Oh, you failed one of your saves, or you re-roll it, or you passed it. I caused 0 wounds that turn. and he just stood there against 5 guys the whole game, doing nothing. It's really frustrating. Stood there with the pillow fists again. Paired chaos hand weapons are better. Now it's just reroll all attacks instead of reroll all hits instead of hits of 1. So again, they're better. It's worth taking 2 hand weapons now. And here is the issue that I have. The Chaos Chariots and the Chaos Gorby's Chariots, they're Chaos Great Blades, hit on 3s, wound on 3s. Chaos Warriors, with their 2 attacks, hit on 4s, wound on 3s. Rend 1, that's the same, but they're only damage 1. Why does it? How does the same, literally the same name for the same weapon, have 2 separate profiles? I mean, I can understand why, because if you're having the hand weapons, 2 attacks hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, then there would be no point. The hand weapons would be completely redundant, and everybody would take the Great Blades if there was 3s, rend 1, damage 2. But maybe give them 1 less attack. Maybe have them with 1 attack with the Great Blade. I don't know, or an extra attack with the hand weapons. But yeah, that really frustrates me. The whole Chaos Warriors War Scroll is still very meh, and against a lot of the other elites things out there, they're still going to struggle. Marauders, these got the better. They were good. They got better. They're still not amazing. They're still a very cheap, expendable unit, but they have a good use now in the current book with the ability to teleport a unit, because these guys, unless you roll a double 1, they're going to get a 9-inch charge, because they have the Boundless Ferocity rule. You change the lowest, when you roll a charge, you change the lowest dice on that roll to a 6. If it's a double, you just pick 1. And then they get the +1 for the drummer. So, yeah, the minimum you get in is a 9, unless the minimum you get in is an 8 on a double 1. If you roll a 3, they're getting a 9-inch charge. So that is really good after teleporting them. +1 to hit if there's more than 10. Where is it? Barbarian Hordes. Add 1 to the hit rolls if there are more than 10, and they get a rend if there are at least 20. Yeah. If there's 10, they get +1 to hit. If there's 20, they get rend. Chaos Marauders are now worth taking. I mean, they were anyway. They were arguably the best battle line in the Slaves to Darkness book. Marauder Horsemen also got slightly better. The javelins, 12-inch range, 1 attack instead of 2. 4s to hit, 3s to wound. They have rend. This is another reason worth taking them. They shooting attacks that have rend. It's rare in the Chaos in the Chaos Army to have shooting attacks that are reasonably reliable. You can get ways of making them reroll to hit, like with Demonic Power. You can, with the Ravagers, you can have them come in on the board edges to threaten objectives, annoy people, slow people down. Of course, if you give them the Javelin, which you're probably going to want to for the shooting, because they got the Feigned Flight rule, they can still retreat, shoot and or charge later in the same turn. So they can still do everything. The Axes are slightly better. They got 2 attacks, 4s, 4s. We don't care about that because we go with the javelins generally. Only 1 attack in combat, 4s, 3s, no rend. But for me, the strength in these lies in the mobility and the shooting attacks. And they add 1 to their hit rolls if it has at least 10 models. So if you take 10 Marauder Horsemen, it doesn't say only in melee, it's just to hit. So their javelins become 3s and 3s, rend 1, damage 1. Very reasonable unit for the price that they cost, 90 points, I believe, for 5. Absolutely worth taking. Okay, Soul Grinder, don't care, never have, never will. Slaughter Brute has some interesting things, but it's not my cup of tea. Other people can cover that. It's another big monster. Corn. It doesn't have the corn keyword. Funny enough, but I thought it was. With a name like Slaughter Brute, you'd expect it to be corn. Has a Beastmaster thing. It's just a big scary monster. 12 wounds, 4+ save for a monster on its own is not bad. Move of 10, 6 attacks, 4s, 3s, rend 1, damage D3. It's 4s to hit is the issue. Mighty Jaws, 2 attacks. Oh no, wait. 2 attacks, 4s and 1s on the top profile, or 4s and 2s effectively. No rend, but damage 3. And again, why have high damage but no rend? It's again, that makes no sense to me. These are Mighty Jaws. How can Mighty Jaws not have rend? How are huge teeth not going to pierce armor? It just, again, that's something that makes no sense to me. But I'll never take one. Mutalith Vortex Beast, don't have one. Not really interested. Does have some interesting mechanics with its mutant effects that it does, but it's just more that's going to take time in your game. I don't think it's going to see much competitive play because it's something that's going to take more time in your turn. Oh, this guy has to do this. I'll pick that unit. Oh, it's more dice rolling and more this pointing. They're not good, at least in my opinion. For competitive play, it's just more time in your turn that you don't need. Furies. These are now well worth taking. They come in a unit of 6 for 100 points. Movement 12, 2 wounds each. They have no save, but you're not really taking them for combat. The reason you take these guys is the Sneaky Little Devil's ability. It's effectively the same move that the skinks get. When it's their turn to go in combat, instead of attacking, you can make a normal move and must retreat. If you do so, this unit, yeah. So if you use that ability, they must retreat. But they get to fly, and they can move 12. So you can charge into unit and have multiple combats on, and if your opponent chooses something else, you can just fly away in your turn to attack. Use this ability, use the skink move, 12 inches, and jump on an objective. It's really useful for getting you further across the board. And with 2 attacks, 4s, 3s, rend 1, 2 wounds each, they're not a bad shout for attacking mages, for attacking squishy characters. Wouldn't send them at anything strong, but yeah. Raptorix, don't know what that is. Doesn't look great. Warcry thing, I'm guessing. And yeah, onto the Warcry War Scrolls. They're all so bad. 1 attack, 4s, 4s, 1 attack, 4s, 5s, 1 attack, 4s, 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 across the board. 6 up saves, 5 up saves, 6 up saves. Nothing that makes me want to take them. You can't give them marks. So unless you're playing a completely thematic army full of Warcry warbands and sacrificing the ability to take any auras of chaos, because they don't even have undivided keyword. They are just cultists. They are rubbish and just cheap bodies that are going to die in droves to anything with any kind of staying power. Iron Golems, I guess, would be the best since they have a 4 up save, but they're still 1 attack 4s and 4s. The gorgeous models, why can't they have better rules? Give me a reason to take them. It's like these Spire Tyrants, I love the look of these models. I think these are what Marauders should look like. But instead we get Warcry warbands when Marauders have been out forever and need a resculpt. But Marauders get better rules for older models. What are you doing, Games Workshop? Give me a reason to take these other than just they look good but die easily. The Sphinx. This is a useful little. It's one of the few things. These two are the Foamoid Crusher and the Sphinx are the two that I would consider using for their other abilities. Yes, they don't get to take marks of chaos, but the Sphinx has a little in-game game you play. You and your opponent, you pick an enemy unit within 12 of that. You and your opponent hide a dice. Hide a dice, pick a number on it, and reveal it to each other. If you have the same dice number, then it has no effects. If you have different dice numbers, then the unit that you picked fights last until the next end of to the end of the combat phase. Oh, no, at the end of the. Alright, here we go. If the numbers on the dice are shown are different, the enemy unit you picked fights at the end of the combat phase until the next battle round. So they could have done it on a 2+, but they brought out this, we'll have a mini game like with the Hand of Dust. I don't mind it because it's 100 points, it moves 10, it's got 10 wounds, bravery 10. For 100 points, to make somebody fight last, that could be really useful. The Foamoid Crusher, he's pretty good. He's got no rend with his crushing fists, but he's got 4 attacks, 3s, damage 2. That's pretty good. And he can throw rocks. Hold terrain, 12-inch range, 2 attacks, 3s, rend 1, damage 2. Why do the rocks that he throws have terrain and have rend and he doesn't? I don't understand, but it is what it is. He can throw rocks. And after this model makes charge moves, he's got the Ogre charge effectively as well. On 6s, they take 1 mortal wound. He's got another ability in your hero phase. Pick 1 terrain feature within 6 inches of this model. 6 inches, that's a pretty good range. Roll dice for each other unit within 6 of that. On a 3+, they take D3 mortal wounds. So I don't know what he does to the terrain. Shouts at it, maybe? Throws rocks at the other terrain? I don't know. But on the 3+, you deter anybody within the other unit within 6 of it. They take D3 mortal wounds. It's one of the few ways of getting other mortal wounds in there. And let's have a look at his points. The Foamoid Crusher there, where are we? Foamoid Crusher, 100 points. He's actually pretty good for 100 points. 10 wounds. 10 wounds. It's, you know, something that's actually worth taking, as well as the Spheranx. Finally, getting onto the Endless War Scrolls. Take a quick sip of coffee. Right. Eightfold Doom Sigil. I think with the endless spells, they all have the place. I'd like to take them in every list, ideally. But some of them lean better to other different builds. But the Eightfold Doom Sigil, that could easily sit in any list and make any Slaves to Darkness army better. Casts on a 5, easy to cast. Set it up wholly within 12. Keep track of the number of models that die within 12 inches of the Doom Sigil. At the end of each turn, roll a dice for each model that was slain. Within 12, on a 3+, you get to choose. You get to the players whose turn it is. So your opponent has to do this as well in his turn. Have to choose a unit wholly within 18, and add 1 to the attacks characteristic of that unit's melee weapons. So if you place this correctly, it has to be a Slaves to Darkness unit. So he has to choose your units. If you place it correctly on the board, you may get 2-3 units, all of which you want to add attacks to. Chaos Knights, Chaos Warriors, Marauders having extra attacks could be a lot of fun. Yeah, basically any units you can give extra attacks to. I think this would, like, for +1 attacks to the melee weapons of your Chaos characters, your Chaos Lord or Manticore getting +1 attack on all of those weapon profiles. Just make sure that is correct. Add 1 to his melee weapons. So yeah, when you've got lots of weapon profiles on one model, you get all those more attacks. So that's going to really start to stack up. So that's worth taking. 60 points, 50 points, something like that. Let's have a look. Eightfold Doom Sigil, 40 points. For 40 points, how can you not put that in your list? The Demon Rift, Darkfire Demon Rift, that's the one, the Chaos Star with the skull in it, flaming. I think this one you might see in a lot of Disciples of Tzeentch lists. People take a Chaos Sorcerer Lord with the Mark of Tzeentch in Disciples of Tzeentch army, because now they're really good, although they can't use their, unless they've got another, they can't use their demonic power spell on a Disciples of Tzeentch unit because they don't have the Slaves to Darkness, unless you take up the Slaves to Darkness units in your army, but that's besides the point. 110 point wizard, and yeah, you could have it just to take these, to take this. And the main reason is, so yeah, you cast it, set it up wholly within 9, it moves 12, and let's see, where is it? After its move, anyone it's gone across finishes with its move within an inch of takes D3 mortal wounds. But fueled by sorcery is what really makes this really work well in like your Tzeentch armies, where you're going to have multiple, at least the way I play my Tzeentch, having multiple endless spells on the board to control. where your opponent can move, help control the board. Casting other, because it's add 1 to the number of mortal wounds inflicted by this endless spell for each wizard and each other endless spell within 12 inches of this model after it has moved. So if you have 3, say you finish a move and you've finished your move within 12 of 3 other endless spells and 1 mage, it's D3 plus 4 mortal wounds that you do into anything that is passed across. So that has the potential. I think that was around 60. 160. No, that one's 50. Again, very worth taking. And then the Realm Scourge Rupture. I like this one because once you've set it on its path, it just keeps going. It's like the Void Pendulum, except it goes widthways instead of sort of lengthways. So it can cover a lot more space on the board, potentially tag a lot more units. Does D3 mortal wounds to whatever it passes over or finishes within an inch of. Set it up wholly within 9. Flies moves 9. This would be good for your Chaos Lord on Sorcerer Lord on Manticore because he can move and then cast it down the line. Yeah, D3 mortal wounds. In addition, until the end of the battle round, half the move characteristic for any units that is passed across, and each other the unit that's with it. So it doesn't have to actually do any damage. All it does is pass across them. And when it says pass, so you can half the move of multiple units with this thing. And what's it cast on? 7. So it's harder to cast than the other 2, but for something that does damage and half movement, again, there's a lot of ability in this book to mess around with your opponent's move. Halving its movement, reducing it by D3, stopping it from moving. So those hard-hitting armies can really suffer against this. It's like if you can make a unit of 30 Hearthguard Berserkers not move and until your next turn, and then you can make them not move again. If you can make these big units that are expensive and will kill anything, if you can make them stay in the same place for the whole game, that's going to make things a lot easier for you to win. All you have to do is just stay away from 3 inches and keep doing that. So there is scope in this book to be really competitive, but I think like a Tzeentch army, it has to be played with finesse. It doesn't have the damage output for you to be able to go in there and smash face like I was hoping you would be able to do, like I was thinking you should be able to do. There's a lot more tactics involved with the contents of this book, and it kind of does that really well. It's the tactics side of things that it does really well. They're okay at fighting. They're not the best. They're not going to survive against your really hard to kill units. But if you can hold them in place, just make them fight last, or stop them moving, you can. If you can take those units out of the game, it's more of a denial book, I would say. The strength of this book is denying your opponent his ability to play his game, and you can focus on yours, which in the grand scheme of things, when it comes to objective-based games, movement-based games, this could really help. And it's not overly powered, at what it does. The spells are hard to cast. For most of the spells, you're going to want to take try and squeeze an Umbriel Spell Portal in there because there's only a 12-inch range on them. But yeah, it's definitely there is potential, and could it make the top tables? Yeah, maybe. There's going to be a couple of different builds, I think. Not a great deal, but there's a potential for a lot of fun in this. And there's some units in it that you could just take for just 100 points a pop. Furies, they're good. For 100 points, 6 of them, 12 wounds, fly, and their skink move. Good value. The Fomoid Crusher, the same. Putting out mortal wounds, throwing things, throwing rocks. Not bad in combat, 10 wounds. There are some really well valued things in here that at a first glance they don't look amazing, but when you start to add in all these little things, it's more of a holistic approach to winning the game as opposed to like Khorne just going there we go. It's opposed to like a Khorne army that just runs in and beats face. It's like you get a Khorne army coming against you and you can stop it from moving half its movement. Suddenly it's not getting at you, it's not doing what it wants to do. The same with Slaanesh. If you can keep a Keeper of Secrets on the spot, it's not going anywhere, it's not earning depravity, you can ignore it. The same with your units of 30, 40 witches. Like there are so many things you can affect in the game with the movement, reducing the movement, halving it, stopping it moving at all, and then the big things that do get to you, if you can make them fight last, you have multiple units fighting them, they're going to struggle because you can kill a bunch, and then when they do, if you're taking like the Nurgle Battalion, or you're finally attacking me, 6s to wound me, give you mortal wounds back. If you've got the Demon Prince buff on them, 6 to hit me, do your D3 mortal wounds back. So yeah, it's all in all, it's not as bad as my initial thoughts were. Am I disappointed about some of the things that I thought they could have done better with? Yes. But I realise that this is written by a person that he likes thematic armies, and he likes a bit more balance than the person that writes some of the other books, which you can tell who's written the other books, the other power books, Slaanesh, Bone Reapers. I don't know if I'd call Deepkin overpowered these days. But you know, the top tier armies, they're all clearly written by the same guy. And lately, you can tell the difference, especially when they release them together. The only exception is like Skaven and Flesh Eater Courts. Because when they came out, they were both ridiculously powered. Now, Skaven are still very strong. Flesh Eater Courts are still very strong. And there are numerous different ways in which you can play them. Though they can be beaten, they are really good, very good at what they do. If you can deny them that, then this book has a potential to do that. If you can keep a Ghoul King on Terrorgeist from moving, he's not earning those points, those 400 and some points back that he costs. And the ghouls that come with him, with their thousands of attacks, if you took the Nurgle Battalion and your Demon Prince buff on there, they're going to destroy themselves just by attacking you. So there's ways of fighting every army in this book, which is what makes it interesting. It's kind of a subtle counter to a lot of what is out there now. I wish you could take them on this War Scrolls. It now says when you take the units as part of your army, you have to give them a mark. In the past, it used to be when you set them up. I wish that you could still choose to have them doing it as you're setting them up, because you could change it on a game-by-game basis, which would make them so much better. For example, if you're going against Cities of Sigmar with a lot of shooting, you choose the Mark of Nurgle within 18 year general, -1 to hit from shooting. If you're going against a lot of other Cities of Sigmar Hollow Heart army, you could choose the Mark of Zinch and ignore the spell effects on a 5+ or a 4+ with the War Shrine. Sadly, we are forced to take the marks as we are designing, as we're building the army list. So we have to go for pick one that's the best at all of it. I still think it's currently Nurgle is the best, but I think Zinch has a lot of potential, especially if you put a Fate Master in there. Take the Ether Quartz Brooch and a bunch of command points for his command ability, and just spam his command ability, and potentially having every unit within 9, really rolling 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s for anything that they do. So hits, wounds, charges, armor saves, and your after damage save with the War Shrine. Your casting rolls for your wizards. Your damage output when it's D3 damage. There's so much that a Fate Master can affect in a Disciples of Zinch army. Not a Disciple, there's so much that a Fate Master can affect in a Slaves to Darkness army. He won't gain the buffs from the Slaves to Darkness, but just by bringing him in, he's only 120 points, he can affect so much of what, he's got an 18-inch bubble with his 9, we'll say 19-inch bubble because he's on a large base. In fact, I have a. So for this guy, this is my custom built Fate Master. So he's any unit wholly within, no, not wholly within 9, just within 9. So he is going to, if we can do this properly, so probably that's about 8. So, he's going to have a fair bubble. If you can keep him in the center of your army, all they have to do is be partially within that, so they can be a lot further off. And yeah, I think that's a trick that some people are going to miss, and most people are just going to choose Nurgle because it's just so good. That battalion with the Demon Prince's command ability is very strong. But yeah, I think Zinch is an underlier that people are not going to realize until they see that. Khorne, again, they can be very good. They can put out a mountain of attacks if you take a Bloodsecrator, or if you take the Sorcerer with the Sigil, the Eightfold Doom Sigil, or other. There's plenty of abilities to get in more attacks. So I think I'm going to have fun with this book. But yeah, I'm slightly disappointed that it's not going to be as killy as I first imagined, but I'll just have to get used to playing it in a different fashion. Kind of like I did with Cities of Sigmar, although that didn't take me long to get round. I don't think this will either. I think I'll enjoy using it, especially considering I beat a Slanesh army last weekend with just what I had thrown together, with what I had with me. Before I had the book, it was just a 1500-point army, and I tagged on the battalion, and it was amazing. So I hope this helped you all, and I hope you enjoyed the review, and I hope this helps you with your gaming. Please leave your thoughts, comments. If you want to subscribe, do so. I don't upload videos very often, but it's something that I should hopefully get into more as we go on. And yeah, until next time, take care and happy wargaming.